Hello and welcome. How are you doing? We are here for your Saturday night, and I'm your Saturday night, and we're going to be doing some painting. So I have all the same brushes from last time. I have my palette ready. I am all set and good to go. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be finishing up this piece, uh, which is Josephine. So this is Josephine. We're going to be finishing this up today. Well, hopefully. We're going to see how it goes. Hopefully I get the whole thing finished. If I don't, that's how it is. That's how it is. Sometimes that's just how it is. But let me talk to you for a minute. You see, I do have at least one thing to promote right now, and that is my story available on Kindle Vella. So if you don't know, well, you're going to in just a second. If you don't know, I am an author, I'm an artist, I'm a filmmaker. Now, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you're going to see right in the beginning of my, not my tagline, you're going to see on my page that I'm an award-winning filmmaker, an artist, and an author. But if you're joining me over, say, on YouTube or Twitch, maybe you don't know. So we're going to talk about that in just a second. A quick little reminder, I do have captions on if you need them. So if you need those are available. If you don't see them, please let me know, but just go ahead, turn them on. So, yeah, I have captions available in case you need them. Now, for that little segue, though, let's go back. I'm going to tell you about my work. So let me just move this. I'm going to move this for a minute. This is my wooden palette. Get that right out of the way. So, depending on whether or not you're aware of this, I write novels, I write novellas, I write poetry, and I am currently also writing stories on on Kindle Vella. Now, that's a serialized platform. So on Kindle Vella, I have a story called Kindly Can We Go? And it is currently on its 23rd episode. So the thing about Kindle Vella is all the stories come in serialized format, so they are released over time. And Kindly Can We Go is one of my current stories there, and it's on the 23rd episode. I highly recommend you check it out. It would be awesome. Absolutely awesome if you did. But there's going to be a link either in the description or in the chat, depending on where you're joining me. Please go over, check out Kindly Can We Go, and make sure to thumbs up and leave reviews. Because it's a serialized format, you can actually thumbs up every single episode. And if you thumbs up the episodes you read, not only does that help other people find it, but that actually means a lot to the creators and the writers, such as myself. And if you leave a review, not only does that mean a lot, but it actually can greatly affect ranking, searchability, all these other things. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get started on Josephine here. These are all the same brushes that I was using last week. It looks like one of them is broken. We're going to work around that. So these are the same brushes I was using last week. And we're going to be using those again this week. But we're going to be expanding our paints. And if you haven't seen the first half of this, it was last week's live stream, so go check it out. And before I forget, a quick visual descriptor. We are in my study and studio space. You can see all of my books, or at least one of my books in the background, and one of my wall tapestries, and my fencing mask, and my helmet. Canvas in the middle with our painting in its current state. We're going to be adding more to this. But this is Josephine. So Josephine exists within my fictional universe that a lot of my stories take place in. So Josephine is actually from New Amsterdam, but she's originally from New York City. So she moved from New York City to New Amsterdam along with her brother Guillaume. Short he usually goes by Liam. And Josephine is undergoing some sort of emotional experience here in this painting. And we're going to explore some of that emotional experience. We're going to really try to dive into it. But let me tell you a little bit about some of the paints I'm going to be using. Tonight I'm going to be using Cali Art and Shuttle Art acrylics. The Shuttle Arts are vintage, and the Cali Art are just a standard acrylic paint. I'm also going to be using, later on, some Liquitex inks. And these Liquitex inks are absolutely awesome. Some of them are semi-transparent, and that's one of the reasons I'm using it. It allows me to add extra details, lighting, things like that. So we're going to have a lot of fun with those. We're going to have a lot of fun exploring this painting and this piece. So let's get going, though. I don't want to wait too long before we just roll right in. So one of the first things I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to be grabbing some phthalo blue on my wooden palette here, and you can get these wooden palettes on my Amazon storefront if you want to go check it out. But we're going to get some phthalo blue. So let me get some of that on my palette. And some of this wonderful lemon yellow. So one of the things I'm going to be doing right now is first I'm going to go back in. You can see the skin is going through a lot of different stages of highlighting and shading. So first I'm actually going to bring up a couple of portions of this, and I'm going to start to unify some of my highlight areas. And then I'm going to go in with that phthalo blue, and I'm going to add it into the deeper recesses of shadows. And the first thing I'm actually going to be doing is I'm going to be getting this number 2 round brush. And with this number 2 round brush here, I'm going to get some of this lemon yellow, and this is from Cali Art. And I'm actually just going to add some shape definition to this nose. One of the reasons I'm doing this is I really want to pick some of the colors up and just add a little more vibrancy. Because we're going to have a lot of shadow and a lot of light. That's kind of one of the theming portions here, which is all this shadow and light that's just hitting her face. It's hard to say exactly where it's hitting her face from as I build this up, but I need to really get that in there. And it's going to break up our shadows more. And it's also going to help me give some more consistency to some of these zones. Even though I want this to be as wonderfully organic as possible, I also want it to have a very specific kind of feeling and visual aesthetic. So I don't want to lose out on my chances to really play up some of my highlight zones. And not all of this is going to look great at first, but it is going to start to take on certain aspects of a far more defined shape and tone and lighting. Just while I have this here, so even in the lips, I'm going to hit some of these little bits. And one of the reasons I'm using the white, the yellow here, is because it's going to help with, again, lighting, but it's also going to help start to add some details in. Because we're really in a stage with this particular painting where details are going to become incredibly important. And I need some more of that lemon yellow up there. You know, details are just going to become incredibly important at this point. And even though I've already established so much character here, I can't lose any of it, you know? I don't want to lose any of this wonderful character that I've managed to build. And there is a little bit of that happening. But that's one of the things that occurs as you create art. You know, you have ups and downs. And we're kind of just working with those ups and downs. And bringing some more of the features out and bringing more of the shape and the contour. You know, and that's one of the great things here that we can do. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to pull so much away, but again, we have to really establish certain light zones. And that's something that I'm kind of doing here, is I'm establishing more zones and more shapes. You know, places where there would be slightly more color. And also just trying to take away. Because it's very muddy right now, right? It's very muddy. So we're going to put aside that brush for a moment. I want to let some of that settle. I'm going to get a different number 2 round. So this is just a number 2 round. We're going to get that, and I'm going to get some of this phthalo blue. And one of the things I'm actually going to start doing with this phthalo blue is I'm going to start working it into some areas where there's going to be deeper shadows. Just have to increase kind of the saturations and add some more depth and what's going to ultimately play out as a kind of gravity here. And this gravity, this depth is very important to helping build more of the life. That's what I want here. I want to build more life. And each one of these little bits of the phthalo blue is helping sell that more. It's helping sell the deep shadows. Because that's one of the things I want to do, is I really want to sell the piece. I want it to feel, like Josephine could be sitting here in front of you. I want you to feel like you know Josephine. Like you can pick out her essence. And some of this I'm going to clean up as we go in further. Like right here, there's a spot I'm not really keen on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some of this yellow. I'm going to muddy that up. That shadow's allowed to be there, but it was too strong. It was too strong. That's better. Alright. And while I let some of that phthalo blue sit, I'm going to get some more of this lemon yellow in here. And as more of this lemon yellow gets in here, like the natural kind of highlights can start to be picked up more. This lighting, this is really dynamic lighting. And because it's really dynamic lighting, Josephine is just strong, intense color all over her face, but we have very dynamic lighting. So, this is that phthalo blue again. I'm coming through and I'm getting it in her eye. We don't want the shadows to be blacks. Blacks are nice, but they're not always what we want. So I'm getting rid of some of like the intense black, and I'm replacing it with this blue. But this eye is like really in shadow. I gotta fix that a little. And we'll fix this weekend. So you can see like now there's more shadow in the eye. And I'm going to do a little bit more of that, but let me kind of take some of that color down a little. And there we go. I'm just adding some shadow in on the eye. Because you end up with wonderful natural shadowing under essentially what would be the hood of your eyelid, right? And that's what I'm doing here. Certain spots of the eye they need that shadow. They need that depth. And I'm doing that with blue. And phthalo blue is just a wonderful color for so many things. And I have some ideas on how I'm going to carry this through as I keep going. But look at that eye already. So much better. So much better. So much more defined. So there we go. Josephine's eye is now a lot more defined. And because I just did that, there's a spot in here. And I think we can do the same thing. You know, again, just defining the eye more. Giving more depth. Giving more life. So those are some really important things that you can do in a piece. Give it more depth, more life. And as you do, you develop new tones. Now I'm going to get some burnt sienna and some cadmium orange. And these are both from the Shuttle Art acrylic line. Have a little trouble with that cadmium orange. But I'm going to take the cadmium orange and the burnt sienna. And with those, is it a burnt sienna? Yeah, it's a burnt sienna. I'm going to mix those with a little bit of the yellow. And once I get the appropriate brush. So I'm going to be taking this number 6 round brush. And I'm going to mix some of those together. So just a little bit of the yellow because we want that same kind of strength. A little bit of the burnt sienna and a little bit of the cadmium orange. I'm going to mix those together. And I'm going to get a mid-tone out of this. Because there's some areas here which need to be raised up, but not very much. So, now that I have some of that mixed up, I'm going to come in here. There's just some area in here that I'm going to start to raise up. No, this is not the final color. This is just a part of the final color. But we have so many really dark, shadowy locations on this face. And this is just something I'm coming in with because I want to bring some of these shadows up a bit and give myself a mid-tone. So that's what I'm doing in here. I'm creating kind of a mid-tone to again help distinguish and add more to the face. We have a lot of lighting going on, and because there's a lot of lighting going on, we have to account for that lighting. We have to account for very natural elements of that lighting. Hopefully you're getting to see how this is going. Now that I've done that, I'm going to get some of that burnt sienna. You know, just on its own. Because I ended up making this all really dark in here. Which, don't get me wrong, I like it. but we can do better. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to do better. Because we can do better. So again, far more dynamic lighting. Far more dynamic lighting. Just a better overall image. Then, just right in here. And you can see already how this is just like picking up a lot more. You know, she's not quite as kind of monotone as she was. There's just a lot more light hitting the face. Do some of that in here. And because I added those extra shadow layers in, and those extra bright spots, you know, she's starting to pick up. Now, right in here. Just need a little bit more of it. So this is kind of one of those pieces where you have to rely on your own instinct. You have to really take into account certain aspects of people's faces, how light hits things, all these other things. There's just so much to really take into account here. Let me see if I can kind of... There we go. Because I don't want her to look too hollow, but she needs to have some facial structure. So that's what I'm doing right here. Giving her a little facial structure. Pulling some of these cool areas up. You know, and this is really emphasizing that shifting light. And then if I feather that in there, again, oh, just so much more dynamic, so much more, you know, just alive and mobile. This is how your lighting should really be. You kind of have to keep working at it, not accepting that, oh yeah, well, that's fine. You know, maybe it's not. Maybe you need to keep working at it. Maybe you need to feather some color in. And so that's what kind of one of the things I'm doing here. I'm feathering in some color. And this feathered in color is going to make her feel more alive. Now you can see I'm feathering it in kind of in her lips. Like already, Josephine has a lot more life. lot more life. And while I'm doing this, because there is shadow on her face, so I need to emphasize that shadow. Alright, we're going to get the number 2 brush. I'm going to get some more of that phthalo blue. One of the reasons is I need to come right in here and start to bring back some of the darkness on the edge. And some of this is not going to be dynamic. It's going to be very harsh. But that harshness is just as important as the dynamic color. I don't want her to be two-dimensional. Which can and will happen if I don't get some of this darker shade color in here. So that's what we're going to avoid. So even the lips are taking on a more lively nature. Now that I've done that, I'm going to grab this nice number 2 flat brush. Number 2 flat brush. I'm going to grab some of my cadmium orange. Just a little bit. I don't actually need a lot here. One of the things I'm going to be doing with it is adding some detail to the lips. And these little details, though hard to see, are going to add a lot. Now I'm going to get a little bit of my lemon yellow, because that's like my highlight. That's my light intrusion. Very carefully. And I don't want a lot of it in here. I am going to be coming back in and adding more of the red, but adding some of that yellow in a thin layer there, you know, that's actually going to allow me to do all sorts of color pickup here. But, you know, just, it's little things. It's little things. Since I already have this lemon yellow available, I'm going to get some more of that up here again. Now we have all these gray zones. And the gray, I'm not going to really lose it per se, but I'm going to lighten it. Lighten some of that gray up. Like, this is just wonderful for building more of our details. You know? Just pick up some of the tip of that nose again. work some in there. Once I get that on there. So I think Josephine is just going to be a really good character. A really good chance to do, like, further character study for me, which is something I just need to do in general. I need to do more character study. I need to have more characters. I write so many characters, but, like, I don't do, like, tons of character study. And that's a shame. That is an honest shame. It's just a really fun thing to do in art. It's a really fun thing to do in art. To do character studies, to do stuff like this. So, I know we're not going to be using black a lot, but there is somewhere I'm going to be using black in a minute. First things first, the hair on the sides, I'm actually going to be hitting with a flat brush and some black. I'm going to be using specifically ash black from Shuttle Art. This is a vintage paint. And with this, I'm going to get this big flat brush here. And you can kind of see some of the shape and body of the hair already. But what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to come from the bottom and I'm just going to do that. I'm kind of using like ziggity zags because there's a very specific hair texture I want. And the reason I'm going from the bottom up is I don't want to miss, you know? But essentially with the hair, I'm going to be adding black and vermilion and then various whites. Because I want the hair to be as different from the rest of everything as possible. And there's already like there's a lot of colors in the hair. I don't know if you can see, but there really is just a lot of color in the hair. And you notice I'm not necessarily just going from the bottom up. I'm also going from the top down. There's areas. There's areas I want to focus on, and I do not want to miss. So as I do that, I'm going to come up in here. Because we already spent some time adding in additional shading and color to the eye. This is fine. Because I'm not covering anything up, I'm just adding some accentuation. And we're going to keep moving forward on this. Now that I've done that, I'm done with that big brush, I'm going to go to a smaller flat brush and I'm going to get some of that vermilion. So this is vermilion, it's a red. And I'm going to be adding that on top. Now, vermilion is pretty bright, but I'm not going to be using it just on its own. I'm going to mix some of that ash black in it, but not a whole bunch. Because I'm kind of going maybe for, I don't know, I'm going to call it dirty red. Not quite auburn, but it has that kind of redness to it. Because the vermilion's very strong. And we can't put it up there, so we're going to put it here. You can see I'm not getting everything. That's not what our goal is here. In fact, if I was going to be very specific, my goal here is to add light texture and, again, more dynamic qualities. We want to have lots of dynamic qualities. But this is also still being done in that sort of, you know, interpretive, animated kind of style. So Josephine has to feel not just like a person, but she also has to feel kind of like a drawing. Kind of like not quite a cartoon, but have that quality to her. I hope that makes sense to all of you. It makes sense in my head. Makes sense in my head. So I'm going to be getting some amber brown. And this amber brown is something I'm going to start to work into some particular areas. I'm going to be using a number 8 filbert brush. Number 8 filbert brush. Not that one. And with this number 8 filbert brush, I'm going to take that amber brown. That's some stray bristles. We don't want stray bristles. I'm going to take that amber brown on this filbert brush. I don't want it too thick. I just want enough. And we're going to be doing just a little bit more here. One of the big things that I'm doing with this is, again, giving, I guess, kind of mid-tones, and also breaking up some areas that might feel a little too harsh. And just feathering it over some of the gray. Working it into some of the yellows. And as you can see, I come back through and I kind of brush in a different direction. And this is taking all of this lighting that I've already kind of built in here. And we're both softening it as well as giving further depth to it. So hopefully you can see that. And now up here, do the same thing. Because one of the biggest things that I want to do with this, and as you can see, like, we're not losing the yellow. We're not losing our lighting. We're just creating some defining to the lighting. We're bringing depth out of it, right? And when I work it into the grays, I think it works really well there. To really show what I mean on what I'm doing. And each step brings us closer to something that feels like a real person. Hopefully you can see what I mean. Hopefully you can kind of really appreciate how Josephine is becoming more and more real. Now, because I've done all of this, I'm going to have to give this a moment. I want to let everything dry. I don't want to overwork this. If this was oil, I could keep kind of working and blending. It's not. So while I wait for some of those to settle in, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be grabbing a little bit of this ash black again. Again, we're using it like really sparingly. We do not want huge black swaths in here. And even though I haven't really been putting it on her skin, I'm going to be doing that right there. So I've just added, again, like more dynamic lighting to this. Being incredibly selective about where I use not just certain colors, but how much of them we're using. But I left that border there between the hair and the shadow so that it's not overpowering. It's just enough. So we're just getting more and more of a built-up visual aesthetic. I'm going to let that settle for a moment. So let's talk some facts that we know about Josephine as I've been kind of figuring her out and building up her character. So Josephine, I think, is, and I won't call her like the straight-laced member of the family, but she is not like her brother Liam. Josephine is... she's her own person. But more than just being her own person, she's also someone who, can really truly just make her own choices, decide what's right for her. And of course, that's something we all should be doing, deciding what's right for her. But Liam, for a very long time, has been involved in all sorts of things. He's been involved in crime. He's been involved in questionable activities. He's had his own goals, his own desires, and one of the things that separates the two of them very much is what they're willing to do to fulfill those goals. Josephine wants to make sure that as she gets what she wants in her life, that she's not doing that at the expense of others. But Liam, he's accepted that as a possibility. Josephine didn't quite know how far Liam was willing to go. And sadly, once she finally found out, once she finally realized, she has to confront the fact that he's gone somewhere that she cannot follow. He's done something that is monstrous. And all she wants is to have it all just not be true. She doesn't want her brother to be a bad person. She doesn't want anyone to. The first time in her life, she feels like she might have to give up on him. Josephine is a kind person. She's a giving person. She's willing to do the things that other people might not want to. Give up her days. Give up her afternoons and her evenings. She's the kind of person who gives to charity and doesn't ask for anything back. She's the kind of person who looks forward to spending time with her family. She's the kind of person who doesn't take for granted that some people don't have a family. She's the kind of person who knows that tomorrow's not a guarantee. But she's willing to gamble on it. Tomorrow's worth it. We're never sure what today holds. We're never sure what yesterday really was. Josephine knows she doesn't have to find out. Not till tomorrow. And she doesn't have to second guess today. I'm going to take a moment to say that all of my characters end up getting a story in one way or another. I still don't know what Josephine's entire story is. I know her family. I know where she came from. Wish I knew more about her. That's a funny thing to really say, I guess, if you're the creator of the person. Just haven't gotten to know her well enough yet. So I'm using a lot of different techniques here. I know, I keep jumping back and forth between what I'm saying and what I'm doing, but you know what? It's my art. I can do this how I want. I think she wants to live a good life. No, that seems sort of bland, but not really. I mean, that's... I think what a lot of us really want is just to live a good life. To be happy. That's what Josephine's looking for. The chance to be happy. Hopefully that's something you're looking for in life too, the chance to be happy. So I've gone through a bunch of times and kind of changed where I am and what colors I'm using. I highly encourage you to go ahead and check out, not just the previous videos or the previous video, but also to ask questions. Even if this is not live when you watch it, please consider asking questions. They actually really help out a lot. They really help make this whole experience better for all of us. So I kind of have a reflection in her eye, which I'm going to brighten up as I go along. But right now I need to make sure I'm getting the appropriate darks and lights here. I'm going to come back in with a couple other colors. I'm going to add more to this. But, my goodness, like, she is really shaping up. Like, this is good painting to me. There's not just a story, but there's also, like, all of our other experiences with it. And, quick note for everyone, you know, if you want to do, like, some really good shadows on things, make sure that you're not just going straight black with everything. Use your blues, use your burgundies, use your browns. You know, you don't have to go black to create shadow. So that's my pro tip of the day. If that could be considered a pro tip. If you didn't already know it. Because you can see, like, that little bit of blue in there really brings everything out very nicely. It adds a lovely layer of depth to everything. So once this dries again a little bit more, I'm going to add some more to the hair. But if you can look, like, where we have come from where we were, this is a far jump. Like, this is a really far jump. It looks really good. I'm really liking the total visual aesthetic. So let's take a moment to think, like, what are some other qualities that Josephine has? Feel free to add anything you want to this discourse. I'm going to actually, I was going to use white, but instead I'm going to use a gray, a C842 gray. Because I just personally do not think that the white is going to get the effect I want. So I'm going to get it on a number 2 flat brush. I'm going to make sure that I have a nice blade on it. Now on this side, I'm just going to add some going up along this edge. You know, some potential lighting. And I'm going to come in and correct some of that because not all of that was good. But you know, we're really trying to maximize some of the lighting in this, maximize some of our experience with this. It's just adding more. Like, her hair is more lively now. At least that's what I think. Like, that just adds so much. Hopefully you can see what I mean. That's a really nice texture, actually. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to mess with the hair too much more. I'm going to be happy with what it is. One thing I am going to do is I'm going to get some more of that phthalo blue. Because I took away some of the shade up here. And I'm going to put it back. Little gray. Little red. Little black. So now kind of her hair is coming around and then it's getting pushed to the back of her face. She probably has some tucked behind her ear. And then some, like, falling over that. So there we go. That's what we kind of have now. Some is falling behind her ear. And some is tucked right behind that. Or some's tucked behind her ear, and then the rest is just falling down the side of her face. You know, kind of hope that impression comes through. If it doesn't, well, you know, this is part of the art experience. Now, I have a few ways I can go about the next bit. I will say really quick that I am going to use a couple of inks on this before we finish up. Just a couple. So I'm actually going to go ahead, I'm going to take this Naphthol Crimson, and I'm just going to add a little bit to those lips. Just a little. Now, with inks, you want to be careful. You know, they do have kind of a transparency to them, but they also have a tendency to do stuff like run. So I'm going to take a round brush again. I don't need a big one. But I'm going to take some of this Naphthol Crimson. One of the big things I want to do with it is add some more dimension to the lips. And hopefully, you know, you can see like how much dimension that really brings in like immediately. Now I did manage to slightly cover up one of her teeth. We will fix that somehow. I won't worry about it, actually. I covered up one of her teeth a little bit. Not going to worry about it at the moment. But while I have some of that on there, I'm then going to come back through, you know, with my vermilion. I'm going to get a little bit of the vermilion back on there, right on top of that ink that was just laid down. And then I want a little bit more of the ink, because these low areas in the lip, that's where the ink shines. Kind of acting as a natural shadow. But look how much more there is now to those lips. Those are good. Those are really good. And now that I have that little bit of that on there, there's a bunch of these that I wanted to use, but let's see which one I'm actually going to use. So I'm going to be using this Phthalocyanine Blue. It's a green shade, Phthalocyanine Blue. Just going to use a little bit of that. And I'm getting this specifically for her eyes. I want her eyes to be dark, but in a very specific way. Yeah. So here we go on this one. You can kind of see what I'm doing. one of the big things that I'm doing here is, again, kind of adding more depth, but I'm also bringing more life, depth and life. Just kind of green. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get some white. That will not be an ink, it's just going to be a standard white. Going to get some white. Even though there's not a lot of white you're going to put on a piece, I'm going to get a little bit. Because I need a little bit for her eyes. And I'm actually going to use that to touch up the teeth as well. So with a number 2 round brush, I'm going to get some of that. So what I'm going to do here, you can see I'm actually adding a lot in there, but I'm going to take that away in a moment. Those are not going to stay that way. That's not going to stay that way. That's going to get toned down a great bit. And then I need to come in here. And since I'm adding this right over top of that ink, I'm not going to lose the brightness, or not the brightness, the darkness of the ink. But what I am going to do is I'm going to pull in, I'm going to pull back on some of it, you know? And that's really what we're doing here, is pulling back. Just pulling back, and then so now there's that big highlight in her eye. Well, actually, while I'm doing that, second highlight there. I mean, we can see like there's some really dramatic light going on here. So, a couple nice little highlights, some reflections in those eyes. Are they a little extra? Yeah. Do we mind? No. We don't. That's great. You know, she's got a couple highlights now in her eye. I'm going to come in with this brush here. There we go. We now have a very well-defined Josephine, but there's some things that she's missing. So I'm going to let her dry a little bit, and then I'm actually going to add in some things. I just have to fix really quick because those teeth should be dry by now, so I'll go ahead and we don't want them to look like weird. And that's really all I'm doing there, is I'm just kind of fixing that up so it doesn't seem odd. You know, there we go. She has teeth. They're better defined now, but they don't quite look so odd. Let me just go ahead while I'm doing this. I just want to really lightly add some shape up there. That's nice. Add some darkness in here. And while I'm adding darkness, I come all the way over here. This whole pupil should be really dark. I don't want to see that pupil so much. That eye should be really obscured. And while I'm doing that, actually, let's just go ahead. That was just all too easy to see. So there we go. Tremendous improvements. Now, there are a couple more things I want to do. I'm just kind of giving the eyes a moment. So I've been thinking, like, how am I going to put in things like some eyelashes? Because I actually think she needs some eyelashes. So I need to get just the right brush for that. And I'm going to be using like this really tiny brush here. I'm going to be slow and steady, and I'm going to give her some eyelashes. Now the good thing is I don't have to do both eyes because the one eye is partially covered up. But we're going to go ahead and I'm going to put some of those on really quick. I'm going to be really careful. So when you do these, you kind of want to... And this is going to be a load and pass, really. It's load and pass, load and pass. Actually think that's almost enough on the bottom. Just a couple more. I kind of think I need a smaller brush for doing these, but the one I have is gonna do a pretty good job. I take that back, it's not. We're starting to get eyelashes, but I don't like them. So I'm gonna go actually, and I'm gonna do this in a different way. We're gonna give that a moment to dry. And then I'm going to do this in a different way, and it'll allow me to, I think, add a couple more details in. But what I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to get my one brush. I'm going to get some of my amber brown. I'm going to fix underneath here on the eye a little. Alright. Actually think that looks a lot better already. And I think one of the things that really helps is this amber brown is semi-transparent. Which means that, you know, we don't have to worry about it covering everything. It's really picking up the underneath very well. strokes up here. Smooth out some of that skin. Will the skin ever be perfectly smooth? No, not if I let it stay this way. But you know what? I don't care. I like this. I like Josephine. I like the way she came out. And I like all this dynamic lighting. And now that I've done that, I'm going to do the one last thing. So I thought about this, and I think the only way to be happy with the rest of the eyelashes, I could do it in paint, but now that I have those on there, I'm actually going to use charcoal. So I have this 2B charcoal, and I'm just going to, if I can do it. Actually, I kind of like that. It's not like a lot, it's not a little. I like it. She has eyelashes, she has the implication of eyelashes. They're not, like, super well defined, but maybe they're just really thin. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they're just really thin. That plan didn't work out how I wanted it to, but you know what? I'm willing to accept what I got. I'm willing to be really happy with what I have. And in the end, that is what matters with art. So, let's go ahead, let's talk for 2 seconds. Depending on where you're joining me, you're going to see a wonderful link either in the chat, if not in the chat, in the description for this video, where you can read Kindly Can We Go. Kindly Can We Go is a wonderful story. Well, okay, it's a dark urban fantasy set within the world of New Amsterdam, which most of my stories include. Josephine comes from that world. And Josephine here, and so, okay, back to the link. If you go ahead, click that link, go read Kindly Can We Go, make sure to thumbs up the episodes, and leave a review when you're done, because all of those reviews help tremendously for authors on Kindle Vella. There's currently 23 episodes, and more are coming out all the time, so it's a serialized story. So every week you're going to get a new episode to read. So I'm really excited about that. So please check it out. Support indie authors, and you know, there's a ton of writers on there, so you can find a lot of new stuff to read. With that said, though, here's Josephine. Her name is Josephine White. Her brother is Liam. Liam is actually in several of the stories that I've written, but this is Josephine, and Josephine deserves her own stories. So I'm going to think about, like, what would Josephine's stories be? What is Josephine's, like, motivation? Who is she? And actually, now I just thought of something while I was doing this. So, who is Josephine? And what does she want with her life? There we go. One of the last little details to really bring her to life. And I would say that was actually just one of the most important details to bring her to life. Why did I not already do that? Oh my goodness. Sometimes I just think, do you have clams for brains? So there we go. We've brought Josephine to life. She is here. She is ready for her own adventures. She is not just a good person, but she's a caring person. She's a kind person. She means well. And because she means well, oftentimes it can seem like life is difficult. Being a good person does not always mean a good life. But that's what she's striving for. A good life. And I see her as the kind of person that, she goes out to canned food drives. She volunteers her time at the community center. She donates. She buys toys for less fortunate kids in the neighborhood. I know I really need to stop adding more to this, but I couldn't just ignore a couple of things. There we go. Okay, there we go. Now I'm done. So here is Josephine. Josephine White, formerly of New York City. She used to live in Brooklyn. She moved to New Amsterdam, more specifically to the town of Overmarsh, with her brother and some other members of her family. In Overmarsh, they found a new life, which was something that she really, really wanted. But she also found that her family started to spread out, fall apart, go in their own separate directions, find their own adventures. For Josephine, she doesn't know what her adventure is. She doesn't know what she's supposed to do with herself. So she does the only thing that makes sense to her. Josephine goes out and helps her new community. She provides them with the same care as the people that she grew up with in Brooklyn. But her heart weighs heavy, knowing that in this new place, she has to build an all-new family. She has to build a new family, make her own connections, and find her own way. And this sad face, this shock, this verging on tears, is when she finds that her brother has become lost. Removing just one more connection she had to the past. And breaking her heart. This has been Art Night with your Saturday night. Please come back and join me for another Art Night next week. But until then, take care, be excellent, and I will see you all again very soon. Bye, everybody.